The Shooting Range. In this episode, pages of history, myths and misconceptions about the Horten brothers' flying wing. Tank triathlon, this time with teams, wheels versus caterpillars, and metal beasts, a top Swedish fighter. With the release of the Viking Fury update, a new aircraft topped the Swedish aviation tree. Meet the J-35D Draken, a supersonic jet fighter with a battle rating of 10.3. Thanks to a series of engineering solutions, the J-35 became one of the first aircraft to be able to perform an aerodynamic braking maneuver, which was later called the Pugachev's Cobra. The fighter owes its unusual appearance to the double delta wing created by Robert Bartini. The machine is powered by a powerful turbojet engine with an afterburner. Protected fuel tanks occupy the space between the wing spars, and under the nose cone is housed a radar system. The forward-facing armament consists of two 30mm guns each with 90 rounds of ammunition per barrel. Suspended armament includes up to 4 air-to-air missiles and up to 38 unguided rockets. The triangular wing provides enough space to fit the fuel, electronics, landing gear racks, and weapons with ammunition. It also significantly reduces the stall speed. No other supersonic aircraft in the game can remain in the air at 170 kilometers per hour. The so-called elevons are responsible for controlling the aircraft. We've already talked about them in the hotline once before. They act as ailerons when you roll and as elevators when you pitch the plane up or down. The reduced sweep of the wing tips has had a positive effect on the machine's behavior at high angles of attack. But despite the enviable maneuverability, you should be careful when turning at low speed. The plane can easily go into a spin. The Draken feels best in realistic air battles. In most cases, when choosing the suspended weapons, we recommend taking 4 air-to-air missiles. They themselves don't guarantee a successful target elimination, but launching a missile forces the enemy to maneuver, and at this point, you can easily catch him with your powerful guns. A couple of hits will usually do the trick. The only downside of the forward-facing weaponry is its ammo load, which will last less than 4 seconds of continuous firing. The J-35 is also not useless in mixed battles. There, it makes sense to add the unguided rockets for ground targets to the air-to-air missiles. In any case, your priority target is, of course, enemy aviation. And only when you successfully achieve air superiority can you switch to ground-based tech. Forward-facing weapons will suffice against not very attentive anti-aircraft gunners, and for the most robust targets you can make use of 12 rockets with high-explosive warheads, penetrating up to 500 millimeters of armor. You can also launch them pretty much at point-blank range, thanks to your maneuverability that can get you out of a dive literally at the very last moment. There it is, the Horten 229, a fighter so unusual that it has a record number of rumors and speculation growing around it. One's about the absolute uniqueness of its construction, others about how it was decades ahead of its time, and even those about elements of stealth technology allegedly implemented by the Germans. Well, it's about time we looked inside this flying miracle and busted some myths. Let's start with the fact that in the first half of the 1940s, it was no longer a surprise for aircraft specialists to see the flying wing aircraft design. Trying to achieve maximum lifting power with minimal aerodynamic resistance the aviation industry has long ago stepped on the path of unconventional aircraft schemes. For starters, there were tailless aircraft, such as the German rocket-powered Me-163. But that wasn't the limit at all. There were aircraft designers who chose the even more radical way, abandoning even the fin or reducing it to the state of an aerodynamic fence. So, brothers Walter and Reimer Horten weren't the only radical designers, nor were they the first. The world's first flying wing was built by a Soviet engineer named Boris Cheranovsky, though later, in hard wartime conditions, nobody remembered his achievements. And then there was Jack Northrop, a remarkable American aircraft designer working in parallel with the Hortens, who created several incomparably more complex and advanced aircraft of the flying wing type. Just look at the XB-35 four-engine bomber, for example. The Horten seemed just primitive next to this huge beauty. But the German machine had jet engines, you might object. And you'd be right. Just keep in mind that the Horten 229 was designed in those very days when the military minds of the agonizing Reich desperately fought in search of any, even the most radical, most insane solution that could delay the imminent defeat. The Allies, on the contrary, didn't have to get wild with raw technologies like jet engines of those days. In episode 174 of The Shooting Range, we've already talked about the Messerschmitt 262. Well, Horten was actually following its story in its entirety, the only difference being that it was a fighter of the unconventional flying wing design. Also, don't forget that the same Jack Northrop easily converted his XB-35 into the XB-49 jet immediately after the war, surpassing his German counterparts yet again. There is also a myth that this unique fighter used advanced stealth technologies, like the ones that were used later in the American B-2. And once again, it's partially true. But what we're looking at here is not a planned solution, it's more of a random side effect and a virtue of the archaic design. It was a mixed architecture aircraft, so the covering and even parts of the power plant were made of wood. Why? No, because by then the Reich had simply run out of duralumin. That's why. And also because the Horten brothers, who mainly designed gliders until then, didn't know their way around duralumin well enough. And wood is known to reduce an aircraft's radio visibility. So, was the Horten 229 the triumph of the German aviation philosophy? Was it a miracle? Of course it was. The very fact that this unusual fighter had managed to take to the air was a miracle in itself. It was also a miracle that the panic-and leadership of the Luftwaffe actually allowed the construction of such an incredible aircraft. It was a miracle that the prototypes weren't bombed by the Allies. And it was twice a miracle that they actually never got to fight. Thanks to these facts, they have been preserved for posterity, so that we could admire their fascinating and, frankly, mad aesthetics. A lot of top-tier wheeled tanks have been added to the game recently, and they can often compete with the MBTs. It's time to find out which one is the strongest. Let's hold a competition, but not in the usual format, where everyone's on their own, but a team-based one. MBTs against the top-tier wheeled tanks. The first team is represented by the main battle tanks with similar BRs. They are of the OF-40 Mark II-A from Italy, the Japanese Type 74, the German Leopard A1A1, and the British Chieftain Mark X. Four-wheeled machines go up against them: the Italian Centauro MGS, the Japanese Type 16, the German Radkampfwagen 90, and the British Recoilless 105. The winner will be the team that wins more trials. The first of them is a cross-country race. The track is traditionally made up of sand, snow, and swamps. The participants start in the open field. And we're rolling. The wheeled tanks immediately break away from the tracked ones. The first one is the German Radkampfwagen, while the British Chieftain is closing the race. But now the competitors are on sand. The Caterpillar tracks are better suited for loose ground, and the MBTs start to gain back their positions little by little. On snowy and swampy sections of the track, where cross-country ability is more important than speed, the MBTs manage not only to catch up, but also to outrun their opponents. Now they're slightly in the lead. Here comes the finish line. This is the most suitable section for wheeled tanks. They jokingly bypass their track competitors, and the whole team finishes the race first. Okay, the wheeled machines score this first point. In the second test, we'll test their survivability. Though actually, there's not much to test here. The highly armored tanks are susceptible to hull break after being hit by any type of high-explosive projectile. The only positive thing is probably their ability to roll into hiding if one wheel is damaged, while the tracked machines will have to immediately stop for repair. On the other hand, the MBTs can survive several penetrations, and they aren't threatened by the possibility of a hull break. So this is definitely a victory for the MBTs. 1-1. Finally, the third test. Shooting on the move. The task will be not only to hit the target while on the move, and it's not that difficult since all the participants have a stabilizer, but to place a good shot at maximum speed. The target will be a not too heavily armored SPAAG. The first to fire are the MBTs. The stabilizers of the German Leopard and the Italian OF-40 work even at the maximum speed of 65 km per hour. Others have more modest results, but nevertheless, each of them managed to successfully hit a target. The stabilizers work perfectly, because these tanks are physically incapable of accelerating to the speed when they lose their effectiveness. Now, let's see what the wheeled machines will do. Their performance is better, as expected, and stabilization problems begin at around 75 km per hour. Until then, the participants have no problems with destroying their targets. That is, they can aim at significantly higher speed, pushing the maximum out of their stabilizers. Though only with a small margin in this test, the wheeled team wins. So, the score is 2-1. But there is an important stipulation to be made. These are different enough machines which should not be compared so directly. Wheeled tanks are perfect for quick frontal attacks or lightning-fast flanking maneuvers. But once they end up in a swampy moorland, the whole advantage is gone. The MBTs are less situational though. They are better at positional warfare, where the crucial thing is not only speed, but also survivability, which allows them to get through several hits. Also, the ability to turn round on the spot is critical in urban battles, so you can maneuver quickly in the narrow streets. Now we've summed up the results, so we're moving on to answering your questions that you ask in the comments. The first question was sent by a player called Jerry Jr. Opeda. Do exposed crew members get damaged or killed by the rear exhaust of a recoilless rifle? Well, in theory, it's possible. Recoilless weapons emit a powerful jet of gunpowder gases upon firing, which would undoubtedly be enough to cause serious injuries to crew members. But it's also not unknown to designers So in reality, tanks with recoilless weapons were created so that the crew wouldn't be threatened by anything like that. Arif Budi writes, I love city maps like the new Sweden, making me dream about visiting Europe. Well, someday we'll all surely get to the moment when the pandemic is over and the borders are open again. The important thing is to stay healthy and strong until then. Take care of yourself and your loved ones, and of course, enjoy the new Sweden map. We love it too. Then there is a question sent by Bartek Sz. Could you do second video? The best MBT? You added more vehicles. Oh, thank you for the idea. We'll think about it and figure out if there are enough new machines at a full second episode. And if we decide that there are, we'll definitely do it. Ivan LOL wants to know, how can you see the X-ray mode during battle? There are two ways to do it. First, if you press the O button, you'll see your machine in X-ray mode. Also, if your tank is out of action, you'll see it in X-ray mode too, on the kill cam. This, however, won't help you much at this point, so we suggest focusing mainly on the first method. Another question comes from Atheist3. Idea for challenge. What is the largest aircraft you can land on a carrier? Why, that sounds interesting. We'll see what we can do there. And the last message for today was written by Emmanuel Bagas. I've finally downloaded and played the game with my old and minimal spec laptop. But it works! Well, that's good to hear. We try to make sure that minimum system requirements of the game are acceptable for most of our players. So once again, that's it for today. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment, which premieres every Sunday at 4 p.m. GMT or noon Eastern Time. Subscribe to the channel, press the bell button so you don't miss any new videos, and don't forget to practice the Pugachev's Cobra on the new Swedish Draken. We're looking forward to reading your impressions in the comments and seeing you in exactly 1 week.